most of the time we've created a place where people have done exactly what we've asked them to do. And what have we asked them to do? Would you show up whenever you can, give whatever you can? Oh, and we've got church conference and we've got some spots we got to fill, and would you be willing to serve? Now, you don't have to come. We just need a name so we can send in the form. And that's what we've asked people to do, and they've done exactly that. Now, we've had people, and many of you are those people that have done so much more. But our people have done exactly what we've asked them to do, and it's produced exactly where we are. And so what we're saying is we need balanced, maturing disciples. And so there's 3 rhythms, 3 connections that we see moving forward that are going to be very, very critical. And so the first one is we already get reaching up to God in worship. And that's the connection of God with us. And most of us get my connection with God. That's what we do. So most churches are good with that. But then there's the second one. And most churches are good with the reaching in to one another. And that's the connection of the people of God, of caring Christian community. And that's where most churches rest. I come into worship and I might have some people, or I might have a small group, or I might have a Sunday school class that I do Christian community with. And that's it. But that's not what God has called us to do. That's an imbalanced disciple. And so there's one other relationship, one other connection that's critical. And it's the heart of all of our congregations. It's the DNA of all of our backgrounds. And it's the reaching out. And that's the connection of God with our world. And so when we begin to think about these 3 critical relationships, it's asking about how are we reaching up to God? How are we reaching into meaningful Christian community, and how do we reach out to our community? And there's this rhythm that we begin to go. And and this is a very portable way to even do a checkup. And the cool thing I like about this can be done by a young child on the way home going, Grandma, Grandpa, Mom and Dad, how's your up? How's your in? How's your out? And there's some really cool ways to just simply to do some great spiritual checkups on how we're doing at being balanced. Now, the other part of being balanced is the mind will only absorb as much as the bottom will allow. And so we are now at a time to take a stretch break. And so
let us continue in our time together. And feel free, if you want coffee, please help yourself. You will not disrupt Pastor Scott and I if you want to get up and get some coffee or anything. So we've talked about the biblical foundation for what's driving this conversation, what is driving this experiment. Your leadership teams, your ministry teams, your pastors have gotten together, and we've began having many discussions about, as we move forward together, what are some of the important pieces that we need to take from all 3 of our congregations? What are the pieces that, as we move forward, that we can't go forward without? And so these are the values that are driving this cooperative parish work. We believe that as we move together into this cooperative parish ministry, that we need to be people of prayer. We believe in the power of prayer, and it is what has been covering this conversation. It's what has been covering this experiment. It needs to continue to cover what we're doing. Philippians 4, 6, and 7. We believe that God does nothing but an answer to prayer. And so we're going to keep covering this in prayer. And we invite you to please join us in praying over the decisions that are made, decisions that you have to make. Pray over the direction that we're going and the discerning that we're doing. We also believe in kingdom over church. When you think about the 80 to 85% of churches that are in decline, that are plateaued or in decline, most of those churches, and I have served several churches very much like that in my 30 years of ministry. Most churches that are on the downward cycle or the downward side of their life cycle have flipped these, and they have put church over kingdom. That's why the churches have gotten to where they're at, because their focus has been on protecting the church, protecting what they're comfortable with, protecting what they experience inside the 4 walls. We believe, as we move forward together, that we have to flip that. And our priority has to be kingdom over church. Church will succeed, church will thrive as we put kingdom first. Kingdom work has to be our priority, not the preservation of institutional religion, not of the institutions of our church. It has to be kingdom first. We exist to grow God's kingdom, and our efforts are focused towards that goal. That's Matthew 6:10 and Colossians 1:3. We also believe what is driving us is a missional identity, an identity of being a people that are sent. That's what missional means. It means that we are to go. We are a group of people that we believe are called to be sent into our community. That's why we talked about not being a gathering only space, but a place where people are sent into the communities. And that's part of our values. We believe being incarnational in our approach to mission and ministry. So, you hear us talk, we just had some sermon series, and we had some sermons where we talked about the priesthood of all believers. And that's what this is about. It's about helping people come in and equip them so that they can go out and take this missional message of Christ with them where they go. We believe in multiplication. We believe in multiplication. I've been in ministry for 30 years, and probably the last 10, I have been stirred that we have missed our understanding of making disciples. I came out of many years of seminary. Scott has come out of many years of seminary. We both have compared our journeys of education, and both of us have said our seminary experiences did not teach us how to make disciples. What we have done in the church, the old model of making disciples and multiplication was open the front door, invite the people to come into church, get them down to an altar, get them saved, and then plug them into a Sunday school class or a small group. That was our model of multiplication. It worked 30 years ago when our churches were 500 and 600 and hundreds. It worked back then. That model does not work today. So the multiplication idea has to be our focus as we move together. We have to help people understand this idea of their calling and what it means to be involved in multiplication. Genesis 1:28, Matthew 22:36, and 2 Timothy 2:2, Ephesians. We can share all of those scriptures with you if you would like to study those. We also are focusing this new experiment, this journey on grace and gracious hospitality. We're going to share with you some interesting insights that we've had with a guest worshiper. You're going to hear about that in our coming series, and what people are experiencing when they come into our 3 churches. The room of ladies over there who had no idea where these 3 churches were located. Part of it is because we need to change our identity of being graceful and gracious, hospitable in who we are and how we're connecting with people. We need to be gracious. We need to be grace-filled. Jesus emphasized unconditional love, so we do too. We need to joyfully welcome people. And when they come, because let's be honest, it is hard to get guests to come to our churches. And when they come, we better be prepared. And some of our churches, we are not ready for guests right now. We need to do some house cleaning. We need to do some tendering. If I bring a guest to my house before my wife knows, that is not a good thing. All right? She wants to be prepared for company. And our churches need to be prepared for company. We need to expect them, and we need to be prepared for it. We also believe that our foundation moving forward needs to be on practical application of biblical truth. We live according to the method laid out in the Bible, and the principles found in Scripture are going to guide us and drive us as we continue to journey together. We also believe in people. They need to be a priority. And not just the people that are already inside the walls of the church, but the people who are not yet part of the church need to be a priority for us. And we hear a lot of people say, but don't you forget us. And we promise you we won't. But we also can't forget the people who are not yet part of our churches, because if we don't start focusing there as well, then we're not going to change the life cycle of our congregations. And so we need to make that shift. Real presence of God with authentic community also needs to be part of our values that we carry forward. We want to provide spaces for all people to respond to God's call. Matthew 22:36-40. We also believe that one of our values that we're continuing to build on is this idea of being servants, servant leadership, and teamwork. We have a lot of people who say, I think we ought to start this ministry. We need to do this. We need to do that. We will do everything that God calls us to do as long as there is a team behind it. We can no longer have solo individuals just running, because what happens is when they run out of energy, the ministry dies. And we can't continue to lose ministries because we don't have teams behind them. That's why, as we've come out this part of COVID and people have asked, why aren't we doing this or why aren't we doing that? It's because we do not yet have the full team to support those ministry endeavors at this time. So, these are what is driving us. Being good stewards. What we have is God's gift to us, and what we do with it is our gift to God. 2 Corinthians 9:6-15. You want to see one of the most beautiful expressions of being good stewards? Go and look at the videos and the pictures from Vacation Bible School. We've had people say, well, why didn't we do that at our church? Or why didn't we do that? We were being good stewards with what we had, what resources we had, and God blessed it and honored it. There is resources that are getting ready to go out here. I think this week, Mark Brown, when's the Henderson Settlement team? Are they?
Waiting a week from Sunday.
Okay, a week from Sunday. Those are resources from all churches that are coming together, and a team from the churches are going to Henderson Settlement. That is being good stewards of pulling our resources together and combining all of that. So these are the values that are going to be driving this conversation, this journey together. So when folks come to us and say, why are we doing this or why are we not doing that? We're going to lean back into the values and say, because it lines up with the values that we're carrying forward. Or we're not doing that because that does not line up with the values that we have laid out in this cooperative parish. That's why we're no longer doing that ministry. They're going to relate to our values as we continue to move forward. And let me turn this back over to Scott and let him share with you as we move forward what we're looking at, building upon the connection, the umbrella, and these values.
So the thing that we love about this, most churches when they do values, they go, what are your values? They go, oh, there's somewhere, you get that book. And then they're aspirational values that they sound good, but nobody's doing them. And I love the fact that our leadership says we don't want aspirational values, we want actionable values. We're going to live our values. And so as we've talked about, what are some of the next steps? What we have learned since Advent, Beta Test 1, Lent, Beta Test 2, Summer, Beta Test 3, they truly have just been tests. We've had some hunches, we've had some speculations, but we didn't know what we were. And each season would tell us what the next season could do. And so as we get ready for fall, we've learned some things this summer that we now move into fall, and with Delta variant and other things coming on, we're like, but we know that there are some steps we're able to do, and particularly, I want to let you know what we're thinking from a kingdom perspective, because when we pray that kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, it's not about something there, it's about how do we live out our faith in God's kingdom as the people of the kingdom. And so we look at that, these are going to be culture shifts. The cultures of our churches have produced the exact same thing we have. Our culture is a system. It's a way of thinking. It's a mentality. It's a way to organize life. It's a culture. And so when we say we know some of our cultures need to shift. And so what we have is the cultures of our internal bodies are so irrelevant to the outside. When people do come in, they go, yeah, that ain't for me. And so we know we've got to make some adaptations to our cultures. And the culture is not my preference, Pastor Brian's preference, or your preference. That's not what the church is called to do. The church is called to be doing what God's preference is, and that's the kingdom of God. And we have a Lord, and we like Jesus as Savior, but we forget we also have to have Jesus as Lord. And that's what a kingdom is. We live in a democracy, a republic, but as Christians, we belong to a kingdom. And so so what are some of the culture shifts? So we're saying we're continuing to follow the movement of the Holy Spirit. We believe God has been stirring, and we just simply try to pay attention. And when people go, well, what's next? We have no idea what's next. We know what this moment holds. We believe we have some structures that will move us into the next, and the structure of the cooperative parish will allow us to move forward and yet still be very nimble. But we say at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what God thinks and how the Holy Spirit's moving. And so our value and our goal is always to be moved by the Holy Spirit. Determine how to use our strategic locations. We've got a team that's looking at the demographics. And what we discovered is the demographic across Kokomo is pretty similar. You know, the same basic people. We have a high baby boomer ratio. I'm on the last wave of the baby boom. Born in 62, 64 was the last wave of the baby boom, and then you have Gen X, and then you have that. And most of Kokomo is high baby boom. And so we go, but then you go into what's called the psychographics. Now the interesting thing with the psychographics, those are people's habits. That's what they watch, that's the music they listen to, that's the food they eat, those are the hobbies. And while we have the same demographic across, the psychographics are very different. And the fishing pool around, so if you're going to go fishing, those of you that love to go fishing, you've got to go, I'm going to go fishing for bluegill. Okay, good. What do you take? Now, if I were going fishing, I'd take, well, I probably wouldn't go fishing, but if I were to go fishing, I would take a hot dog or whatever's in the fridge, and I would go expecting to catch nothing. And my behavior would produce exactly what I would expect. Because my dad's a great fisherman, and he taught me well. I just don't have the patience to sit there and wait for fish. I'll go buy them. But if we're going to go fishing for people, you go, what do I want to catch? Where are they? What do they like to eat? What kind of bait do I have? And so the fishing pool for Grace and Parr is a very similar fishing pool. The people that live in those neighborhoods around Grace and Parr, very, very similar fishing pool. The people around the St. Luke's campus, very different fishing pool. And so the strategies we would use for the St. Luke's campus would be very different than the downtown campus or the Park campus. And so we have to go, how do we determine, how do we utilize our strategic locations? Because each have a gift. But we also said so before we go, how do we do everything? Well, the reality is we can't do anything and everything anymore. We might have, but our current reality is we can't. But together, we have more options. And so how do we best utilize our strategic locations? And so we're doing some deep dives into our demographics and our psychographics to go, who's living out there? And we're looking at 60 to 80% of the people that are not going to church. So we're not looking at trying to shift more sheep. I have to be very careful now. Otherwise I'll step in. So we're looking at the people that are not going to church. How do we reach them? And our methodologies are not what makes me feel good. It's what connects with them. Then we're going to train people on how to live into being a blessing. And that's why we encouraged you this summer. Begin with prayer. What's God calling you to do? Listen to the Holy Spirit. Listen to those around you. Invite them to eat. The cool thing is when we talk about being incarnational missionaries, you get to do what you love to do. Because God's already put you in a very unique place to make connections, and you already have the connections to do it. So keep doing what you're doing, and then you begin with prayer, listen, you eat, you hang out, you spend time together, and then you invite them, how can I serve you? Hey, can you come alongside of me and serve? Hey, we're going to do this thing in town. And then they go, why are you doing this? And after you build this relationship, then they're open to tell, why are you doing this? Well, let me share with you my faith journey. And you're able to talk about your story and their story of faith. So we're going to do more training into doing that. We're also talking about DMM, disciple-making movements. And so most disciple-making is usually informational transfer. We're going to give you information in a class. And what we're saying is, we're not about one generation information transfer, we're about 4 generations disciple-making. And the model we're using is not that I'm training you for you, just so you can go, hey, I now know more stuff. No, we're training you to train somebody else with the eye on the 4th generation out from you to make disciples. And there's a simple, portable, trainable way to do that. And we're looking at some other ways to just simply be disciples and to learn to live out our faith, not just simply show up one day, one building, one time, one room. And when you begin to go, what have we done in church? It's not all that exciting until God shows up. And God shows up and stories begin to happen. Now, that's not saying nothing's going to happen in the rooms. Hopefully God shows up in the rooms. But the real exciting happen is not in the huddle. It's when we hit the game Monday through Saturday. And then we're going to establish different measures. It's not just, so when we go, how many people have showed up for worship? What's the offering? Those are called lag measurements. They don't help us produce anything. They just simply tell us what that is. It's called lag measurements. We're moving to lead measurements. We want to measure the stuff that actually makes a difference. So we're going to change our metrics. And so we're going to go, what percentage of the congregation is involved in missional living? We want to have you tell the stories. Hey, I was out golfing and I was talking to my friend and we had a spiritual conversation. We're going to measure those because that's what begins to make a difference from a disciple. Hey, I had coffee with a friend. Wonderful. Isn't that much better to count how many coffee and conversations and golf and knitting? There's a knitting group today. People, you do what you already do. God's already wired you and put you in relationship with people. And we're just going to come alongside of you and go, how do you have those spiritual conversations? Because what happens is we've turned our missions into transactional missions. We're going to raise money to write a check for people we don't have to go to. So we feel good about ourselves. That's a transactional mission. We're moving to incarnational mission because those are where the stories are. Where I'm now, Jesus was incarnational. And we want to just, how do you begin to build those relationships? We're going to determine how many fresh expressions we want to start in 2022. How do we reach people that are not coming to our doors, and what are those that are going to be there to reach them? And then we're going to determine how many disciple-making movements. And what we're finding is when you do this 8 to 10 week training, there's 30% reproduction. And Pastor Brian, Jenny, and I are trained, and so we do 3 groups of 10, and 3 people from each of those, so that they create 3 groups of 10 each, and that's where you begin to get into multiplication. I do a group of 10, 3 people go, I'm going to do a group of 10. Now you have 3 to 9 to 27. And so it's that multiplication, that replication that we're going to be looking at measuring. Now we're still going to go who showed up on Sunday and who's doing this and that, but we're very aware those are not lead measurements that are going to make a difference. They're simply leg measurements telling us who showed up. So those are kingdom principles. Now we're going to move to structural principles and some of those pieces that we're going to be doing. So what we're doing now is simply bringing you up to speed. Before, it's like we're testing and we've tried to be as forthright with the information through our newsletters and preaching and teaching and just sharing and speculating what we're doing. But it was simply a test to go, what is this? And we think there may be something. But now is the time to go, no, we actually have a plan. And that was put together in July, and now we're having town halls in August and September. So you're getting it fresh. We've not been holding out on you. You've had everything we've had up to this point. And so this is bringing you up to speed. Now we're also going to have the video, and we're going to have some question and answer times because we know these people need to process some of that. At some point, we will be making a formal request to do paragraph 206 in the Book of Discipline, the Cooperative Parish. One of our district superintendents said, why don't you consider paragraph 206 a cooperative parish? And we said, what's that? I go, well, it's paragraph 206, let me send it to you. And we looked at it and was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. How most of the time the denomination has applied paragraph 206 is, we got a group of small churches that are dying, so let's throw them together and make them into one big group of people. And it's never worked. And so we've been experimenting, just kind of dating, living together, and doing all of this, and kind of going, hey, the relationship's shifting. And it's funny because when Parr came into the relationship, Pastor Brian goes, we got to stop using the metaphor, there's now 3 churches. So we can't use the dating metaphor anymore, but we are working together. But as we do that, we said, the cooperative parish is as a model that just simply says, how do we strategically look at a geographical region? Our friend Rob is using a model of individual small community churches up north. We're saying, no, if we use the model of one church at strategic locations, it gives us latitude. And so we're saying, as we move into 2022, let's begin to live into the umbrella so we can now no longer think about our city in sections, but to go, let's think about our city across the heart of the city and think as one. And you say, well, if we vote this way, what happens? Well, we begin to live into it. And the structure allows us to move more structured as one into strategic locations that feel more like, as Brian just said, the merge language, but still using a multi-site model, not moving into one house. Or if we say, we need to bring it back a little bit and keep our independence, the model allows the latitude, but we've got to move into that model to go, what makes sense for us so we can think about the city strategically. And then we're going to have our leadership teams come together instead of going, well, what does Grace's leadership team think? What does St. Luke's leadership team? What is Parr leadership? Now the leadership teams are getting together and going, as we think about the city. And so we just are saying, we just got to let our leadership begin to live into that and see what that might look like, how we begin to reframe it instead of just thinking about our own niches, begin to think about how we're called to do the city. And then we're going to develop ministry systems because we've got to have a care system, we've got to have worship systems, we have all of those. So those are just ways to make things happen. And so you've got the big picture system as it plays out on the local level. So it's very much, both Brian and I are both and people. And so when we talk about the houses, very experientially, very little will change how we're currently feeling, but we have the benefit of a larger ministry. And here's the other thing is, you go, well, I'm concerned about this or I'm concerned about that. Here's what we've learned as we played out every scenario. Every church individually would have to make those decisions whether we move into a cooperative parish or not. We've got to look at facilities, we've got to look at finances, we've got to look at, those decisions have to be made whether we come together or not. The hard decisions are going to happen whether we come together or not. We think we're stronger by coming together. A different outcome to those decisions is a different decision. And then we're going to begin to go, okay, what does a cooperative parish budget? Now, again, we don't know what that looks like. There's very different models. There's multiple models that we can use, but we need that year to go, are we putting it in onto one big pool? Or are we doing a cooperative parish connection and then individual? And each of those are valid. We don't have an answer for that yet because we're not there yet. And so we go, what does that look like? Now here's the thing that when people start going, oh, I don't know what they, meaning the people sitting next to you, are going to do with our money. Here's what I know. You've already lived in this. If you were at Grace and St. Luke's particularly, you've already lived in this model. It's called the 8:30, 9:30, and 10:30 or the 11 o'clock worship service. You've already had multiple options on Sunday morning. You've already had multiple gatherings. You've already had multi-pastoral staff. You've just had it in one building, in one location, usually in one room. So nobody at 8:30 said, well, the people at 9:30, what are they going to do spending my money? What are the 11 o'clockers going to do with my money? You never said that when you all did the worship services in one room in one building. And so now when we go, no, it's one church, as we begin to think, but we don't know what that budget looks like yet. But when we start thinking about what does this multiple thing look like, we've already lived in it. We already know how to do multiple services with multiple pastoral staff. We're just now saying it's not in one room in one building. It's now across the city. And so this begins to let us live into that, and then that will be shared as the leadership says what makes the most sense. And the gift of the cooperative parish is there's latitude to live into it and adjust it, and it's a structure that allows us to live and to function like that. And then we're going to develop smart goals. You got to have goals. You got to know what you're shooting at. And many times churches are like Charlie Brown shooting arrows. He'd shoot the arrows and then draw circles around and go, look, I hit it. Well, were you aiming at it? I'm like, oh, I'm just glad it hit the fence. We're going to go, no, we're going to be, we don't have the gift of unlimited resources. I don't think we ever did, but we really don't now. And so we're going to go, how do we best utilize and strategically utilize our resources? Now, one of our engineers, when we were talking about multiple services and what we were able to do in Lent, and then as we had to look at summer and make some adjustments, our engineer said, that's not very efficient. And we said, you're absolutely right, it's not efficient. We tried efficient, people didn't really like efficient. And so we said, this is what we can do right now. And so we're saying, and so we're adapting, we're listening, we're trying to pay attention to all of those pieces. And so when we walk through this, we know God is moving us to move into all of that. And then what of our leadership teams ask our superintendent? So we've had 3 superintendents since Brian invited me to lunch. And so this new superintendent is really excited. He gets it. He helped our friend Rob up north walk through this model, and he's really excited because this is about the kingdom of God. And so we have said sometime this fall, we're going to make an official request. The leadership has already said we want to make an official request to move in this direction. We feel like this is where it is, but the churches have to say this is the direction. So we've asked him that this is where we're going. What do we need to know? And one of those things will be a church conference, and that's a church conference is when all members vote. And so you will determine the future of the church. We believe as leadership, as a pastoral team, as our staff and ministry leads, we believe this is our best option moving forward. But at the end of the day, it's God's church, and we're asking the people to discern where that is. But if a church conference vote says yes, we're putting all the structures and pieces in place that he can take it to the cabinet, and the cabinet can make us an official cooperative parish out of paragraph 206. We're also saying this is not the season to mess with us, appointed. Not in a rebellious way. And he says, this is strategic, this is missional, this is kingdom work. And if you continue to give me missional reasons, I can fight why you should be moved. Now, Brian's been here 9 years. I've only been here 2, moving into year number 3. And we believe there's going to be enough work for us to retire out of here. So we're committed. And we said, you need to let us really play this out. And so we've made that request. And the leadership, the church's leadership has made that request. And we've also said, we're not doing this just for us. We believe we have a model. We've been told by Sam Rayner that we're pioneering something that nobody's doing. Nobody. They've done mergers, but usually it's a big church and a small dying church coming together. We have churches coming together in strength, functioning out of strength. And he goes, nobody's doing that. And we've also been told by our superintendent and our coach, Sam Rayner, that we're probably working on a model for our tribe. And as we look going forward in the city of First, how cool is that God is stirring up something, that we're creating something that has not existed, and using a paragraph in the discipline that is designed for strategic ministry that has not been utilized in this manner. And so we're saying if we can come alongside other churches, we don't have to agree theologically with other churches to help them with their structure. And so we'll help you come alongside to others to do that. And then we said, how can we, and what are the other partnerships and resources in this town that you know of, as well as the area? And then we've also said, how can we be a resource to the conference? How can we be a resource to other people and the relationships that we have with other people around not only our conference, but in other places? We're saying we believe God's doing something, but we believe this is something not for us to keep, it's something for us to share. And so we really are just, which is the other reason we've been keeping a journey and a log. What are those things that are unique to what we're doing, and what are those things that are transferable? And there's a lot of transferable pieces that God is stirring.
So we've asked a lot of our leadership teams, our ministry teams. Scott and I have been asking a lot of each other. We've asked a lot from our conference superintendent, who is prepared to go and ask a lot from our bishop. And there's a role for you as well. And tonight our ask for you is, will you join us in praying over this? Will you join us in intentionally covering your leadership team, your ministry team, your pastors? I thank you for Paula and Dave, who preached a couple weeks ago and prayed over the pastors. Thank you for that. But will you continue to do that as we come and discern and question and pray together? But we're also asking you, can you affirm what we think God is calling us to do? Can you affirm the observations that your leadership team, ministry team, and pastors are making? Can you affirm this observation that we believe that we really are stronger together than we are on our own independent islands? Can you affirm that? Because we want your input. And Scott already shared with you, I've already shared with you, there will come here in the coming days, in the coming weeks, a chance for you to voice your affirmation or not for this cooperative parish. And before we get to the church conference, there's going to be 2 more what we're calling town hall meetings, but they're strictly going to be question and answers, because tonight we've got a little bit of time for you to ask some questions. But Scott and I today just were discerning, and we said we've got to create a space for people to ask questions and to have conversations. We've had them in our offices with folks, but we will have, and we've got a couple dates that we just kicked around today. We'll check our church calendars tomorrow, but we will get those dates out to you. There'll be one midweek in the evening, and one will be a Sunday afternoon after churches are over. And we'll create those places for people to come and just, hey, I've got a question about this. I've got a question about this. And we'll have a chance to talk about that. So we also want your input. There's an input sheet that we're going to be passing around. We would love for you, if you have time, to fill it out tonight. We know some of you are ready to fill it out right now. And we know there's others that are processors that, I need a couple days to think about it. And we want you to take that if you're a processor and want to take it home. But please, don't throw it away. We do want to hear from you. And fill it out. If you need to drop it by any of the offices, just fill it out, drop it by the offices, and we'll add it to the rest of our collection of all of that. So this is our request to you. You have a role in this, and we want you to be a part of this journey as well.